Before we get started, candidates, here are the rules. When we ask you a question, you will have 1 minute to answer, and 30 seconds more if we ask a follow-up. If you're attacked by another candidate, you get 30 seconds to respond. And here's how we keep time. After we ask a question, you'll get a green light. The yellow light means you have 30 seconds left to finish your answer. And when time is up, the light turns red. That means please stop talking. If you keep talking, you will hear this. You don't want to hear that. Joining me in the questioning tonight, my CBS News colleague, Chief White House Correspondent Major Garrett, and Kimberly Strassel, who is on the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. And you can participate in the debate, too, through our partnership with Twitter. Tweet us your questions and comments using the hashtag GOP debate. So let's begin. First, the death of Justice Scalia and the vacancy that leaves on the Supreme Court. Mr. Trump, I want to start with you. You've said that the president shouldn't nominate anyone in the rest of his term to replace Justice Scalia. If you were president and had a chance with 11 months left to go in your term, wouldn't it be an abdication to conservatives in particular not to name a conservative justice with the rest of your term for the...
Well, I can say this. If the president, and if I were president now, I would certainly want to try and nominate a justice. And I'm sure that, frankly, I'm absolutely sure that President Obama will try and do it. I hope that our Senate is going to be able, Mitch and the entire group is going to be able to do something about it in times of delay. We could have a Diane Sykes, or you could have a Bill Pryor. We have some fantastic people. But this is a tremendous blow to conservatism. It's a tremendous blow, frankly, to our country.
So just to be clear on this, Mr. Trump, you're okay with the president nominating somebody?
I think he's going to do it, whether I'm okay with it or not. I think it's up to Mitch McConnell and everybody else to stop it. It's called delay, delay, delay.
Governor Kasich, I want to get your thoughts on this. Justice Scalia was a real believer, obviously, in the strict word of the Constitution. Now, Harry Reid says that a failure to fill his vacancy would be, quote, shameful abdication of one of the Senate's most essential constitutional responsibilities. Where do you come down on this?
Well, John, first of all, if I were president, we wouldn't have the divisions in the country we have today. And I do want to take a second as we reflected on Judge Scalia. It's amazing. It's not even 2 minutes after the death of Judge Scalia. 9 children here today. Their father didn't wake up. His wife, sad, but, I just wish we hadn't run so fast into politics. Here's my concern about this. The country is so divided right now, and now we're going to see another partisan fight taking place. I really wish the president would think about not nominating somebody. If he were to nominate somebody, let's have him pick somebody that is going to have unanimous approval and such widespread approval across the country that this could happen without a lot of recrimination. I don't think that's going to happen. And I would like the president to just, for once here, put the country first. We're going to have an election for president very soon, and the people will understand what is at stake in that election. And so I believe the president should not move forward, and I think that we ought to let the next president of the United States decide who is going to run that Supreme Court with a vote by the people of the United States of America.
Dr. Carson, you, like others, put out a statement after the death was announced, and you said the president should delay. You've written a book on the Constitution recently. What does the Constitution say about whose duty it is here to act in this kind of a situation?
Well, the Constitution actually doesn't address that particular situation. But the fact of the matter is, the Supreme Court obviously is a very important part of our governmental system. And when our Constitution was put in place, the average age of death was under 50. And therefore, the whole concept of lifetime appointments for Supreme Court judges and federal judges was not considered to be a big deal. Obviously, that has changed. And it's something that probably needs to be looked at pretty carefully at some point. But we need to start thinking about the divisiveness that is going on in our country. I looked at some of the remarks that people made after finding out that Justice Scalia had died, and they were truly nasty remarks. And that we have managed to get to that position in our country is truly a shame. And we should be thinking about how can we create some healing in this land. But right now, we're not going to get healing with President Obama. That's very clear. So I fully agree that we should not allow a judge to be appointed during his time.
Senator Rubio, you're a lawyer. Senator Rubio, you're a lawyer. Quickly, can you address the issue of whether the Constitution tells us who has the power to appoint Supreme Court justices? And then also, the Senate Republicans last year floated an idea of removing the filibuster for for Supreme Court nominations. You seemed open to that. What's your feeling on that now?
Well, let me first talk about Justice Scalia. His loss is tremendous, and obviously our hearts and prayers go out to his family. He will go down as one of the great justices in the history of this republic. You talk about someone who defended consistently the original meaning of the Constitution, who understood that the Constitution was not there to be interpreted based on the fads of the moment, but that it was there to be interpreted according to its original meaning. Justice Scalia understood that better than anyone in the history of this republic. His dissent, for example, on the independent counsel case is a brilliant piece of jurist work, and of course his dissent on Obergefell as well. Number two, I do not believe the president should appoint someone, and it's not unprecedented. In fact, it's been over 80 years since a lame duck president has appointed a Supreme Court justice. And it reminds us of this, how important this election is. Someone on this stage will get to choose the balance of the Supreme Court, and it will begin by filling this vacancy that's there now. And we need to put people on the bench that understand that the Constitution is not a living and breathing document. It is to be interpreted as originally meant.
Quickly, though, on this question. Very quickly, Senator, on this specific question, though, you were once in favor of dropping the threshold to 50 to a majority. You were never in favor of that.
No, I've never. There has been, for example, today, according to the changes Harry Reid made, appellate judges can now be appointed by simple majority, but not Supreme Court justices. And I think today you see the wisdom of why we don't want that to change. Because if that were the case and we were not in charge of the Senate, Harry Reid and Barack Obama would ram down our throat a liberal justice like the ones Barack Obama has imposed on us already.
Governor Bush, I'd like to ask you, conservatives for a long time have felt like their Republican presidents have picked justices that didn't turn out to be real conservatives.
Right.
Bernie Sanders has said he would have a litmus test. He would make sure that he appointed a justice who was going to overturn Citizens United. If they can have a litmus test, what about you? Would you have a litmus test for a nominee, and what would it be?
Not on specific issues, not at all. I think the next president, if I'm president, I'll appoint people, I'll nominate people that have a proven record in the judiciary. The problem in the past has been we've appointed people thinking you can get it through the Senate because they didn't have a record. And the problem is that sometimes we're surprised. The simple fact is the next president needs to appoint someone with a proven conservative record, similar to Justice Scalia, that is a lover of liberty, that believes in limited government, that consistently applied that kind of philosophy, that didn't try to legislate from the bench, that was respectful of the Constitution, and then fight for that nomination to make sure that that nomination passes. Of course, the president, by the way, has every right to nominate Supreme Court justices. I'm an Article 2 guy in the Constitution. We're running for the President of the United States. We want a strong executive for sure. But in return for that, there should be a consensus orientation on that nomination. And there's no doubt in my mind that Barack Obama will not have a consensus pick when he submits that person to the Senate.
Right. So, Senator Cruz, the Constitution. So, Senator Cruz, the Constitution says the president shall appoint with advice and consent from the Senate, just to clear that up. So he has the constitutional power. But you don't think he should. Where do you set that date if you're president? Does it begin in election year, in December, November, September? And once you set the date, when you're president, will you abide by that date?
Well, we have 80 years of precedent of not confirming Supreme Court justices in an election year. And let me say, Justice Scalia...
I'm sorry to interrupt. Were any appointed in an election year? Or is that just there were 80 years?
80 years of not confirming. For example, LBJ nominated Abe Fortas. Fortas did not get confirmed. He was defeated.
But Kennedy was confirmed in 88.
No, Kennedy was confirmed in 87.
He was appointed in 87.
He was appointed in
88. That's the question. Is it appointing or confirming? What's the difference?
In this case, it's both. But if I could answer the question.
Sorry, I just want to get the facts straight for the audience. I apologize.
Justice Scalia was a legal giant. He was somebody that I knew for 20 years. He was a brilliant man. He was faithful to the Constitution. He changed the arc of American legal history. And I'll tell you, his passing tonight, our prayers are with his family, with his wife Maureen, who he adored, his 9 children, his 36 grandkids, but it underscores the stakes of this election. We are one justice away from a Supreme Court that will strike down every restriction on abortion adopted by the states. We are one justice away from a Supreme Court that will reverse the Heller decision, one of Justice Scalia's seminal decisions that upheld the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. We are one justice away from a Supreme Court that would undermine the religious liberty of millions of Americans. And the stakes of this election for this year, for the Senate needs to stand strong and say, we're not going to give up the U.S. Supreme Court for a generation by allowing Barack Obama to make one more liberal appointee. And then, for the state of South Carolina, one of the most important judgments for the men and women of South Carolina to make is who on this stage has the background, the principle, the character, the judgment, and the strength of resolve to nominate and confirm principled constitutionalists to the court. That will be what I will do if I'm elected president.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. All right, we're going to move on to national security here.